video earlier, but I've eaten. But today, Fran tidies up the kitchen. So today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the way we think about ourselves and how we interact with each other totally affects like the world that we live in. So as I've been going, I believe in self-ownership, and I don't believe that we should belong to a state. I belong to me. That's what it means. And to be honest, I don't even think the whole concept of the state is just tyrannical. It treats us like we belong to it. It's not our public servant. And it just leads to bad things, because it's an excuse for people to not think about themselves as if their actions have consequences, etc. So, today it's the 12th of April 2024, and there's bad stuff going on in the world, which involves states attacking other states, and lots of other states rallying round the state to help that state, or stand up for it, or send money to the state, or we'll get to the point where there might even be troops going into Ukraine from NATO, which is just like, that will be a whole barrel of laughs for all the NATO countries, because that means that if you're in a NATO country and you're at war with Russia, then you're a legitimate target for Russia. And that's just not it's not a good thing. What we've got going on in Israel and Palestine at the moment, it's just terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And what happens is everyone jumps on the collective, I belong to this collective bandwagon, and no one can see sense. It's like, in Gaza, atrocities have been committed by all sides. But there are people who are suffering the consequences. The people who are suffering the consequences are the people who live in Gaza. And, they're not all Hamas. And if we actually had any kind of logic and reason in the world, and people were we accepted that individuals are autonomous and belong to themselves and weren't necessarily just belonging to some collective based on where they were born, then we'd just be totally outraged at what's going on. But it's like, we're not. It's just going on because it can go on, because it's just the whole, obviously there's going to be a state. People just can't imagine there not being a state, and they don't realise that they haven't even signed up for it. It was just there when they were born, and so they don't, it's just completely normalised. And most people, I've had the beginnings of conversations about this with my dad, but he, like everyone else, can't see, the idea of a state is just so fundamental. Like, it's a principle for people, whereas it's not a principle for me. Like, the principle where things start is self-ownership. And if you don't have self-ownership and you're not free to decide what you do and who you interact with and how you interact with, then you're just not free. And so the state doesn't guarantee freedom, it takes it away. Like, right at its onset, it's, if you belong to a state then you're not free. That's it, that's just the way it is. Even before we start to talk about taxes and things like that, people will just say, well, obviously taxation isn't theft. It's like, well, why obviously? What's so obvious? Because as far as I can tell, theft is somebody taking something from you that you don't consent to. Sounds like theft to me. So taxation, nobody asked you if you wanted to be taxed. Is that how you get around the theft thing? Like, so if someone's to steal something from you but didn't ask you if you actually minded, then it's okay. Is that the way it works? Or what if, I don't know, what if someone just, imagine if you had a family member after the whole of your life, he'd just steal something from you every month, and it was just so normal to you that it didn't occur to you that perhaps he was stealing. It's just like, oh no, that's just the tax I pay Uncle Joey or something like that. It's like, yeah, it's the tax that you pay. And there's another thing about this whole collective state mentality is when you're not spending your own money, or when you're spending money without any consequence at all, then you can do some really bad things. So, you know, weapons aren't free. You know, the destruction that's going on at the moment is costing a lot of money in weapons, but like billions in weapons. And, you know, we get a lot of people saying that there should be redistribution of wealth because of the poor, because of, you know, whatever, Western countries have more money, but no, none of these people seem to like pause or think, imagine what you could do with all that money if it wasn't just spent on blowing things up. I mean, it's literally burning money. You know, there's no other way to think about it as far as I can tell. You know, you're making things. Imagine if you just spent all that money on fireworks. People would think you'd be crazy. But, you know, that's just what we do. So, you know, there's a thing going on in Spain at the moment talking about wasting public money. Where there's okay, so on the telly in Spain, which I don't watch, by the way, I haven't watched telly for, I don't know, well over 10 years now. But I'm aware of a programme that's on every day, and it's like, you know, they have guests on and they do stuff, and it's like, you know, very entertaining, and like, I think it's from like 9 to 10 or around that area. It's like the most viewed television programme in Spain. But the guy on it who presents it, so I've heard, occasionally criticises the government and says things that like he's not entirely on board with them, and like interviews people from, you know, other political parties and stuff like that, and so apparently the government doesn't like that. So in Spain there isn't like a BBC where, you know, everyone pays a license fee. It's just directly funded by, there's a Televisión Española. It's just like the whole, well, it's like Radio Televisión Española. It's like the whole thing, and they do like public radio and public telly, and there's that's so. What they want to do is they want to hire, or they have hired, some guy, and they're going to pay him 28 million euros over 4 years or something to go against this other show that's on. And obviously, if you're on the public telly, at least in Spain, you're not going to get very far criticising the government. It's not like the BBC, which is like kind of lefty. So even if there's a conservative government, I won't say right wing, because I don't think there has been a right wing government pretty much anywhere for, I don't know, ages. You know, on the BBC, people do criticise the government, and they always have criticised the government that's in power. It's kind of, you know, they can go there somewhat, but in Spain you can't. It just doesn't happen. In fact, famously, we're talking like 20 years ago or something, when Jose Maria Aznar was in power. It was like ridiculous to the extent that the telly would be in the Conservative government's pocket, you know, just totally repeating party lines and propaganda and stuff. I even saw that, so that was kind of crazy. But anyway, so 28 million euros is wasted on a telly program. To be honest, I'd rather get wasted on a telly program than on weapons to go and blow up innocent kids. But you know, that's just me. Each to his own. But so with that, there seems to be a small amount of public outcry. You know, people like, what? What's going on here with this thing? But there's no sense of, well, that's kind of peanuts compared to what the state has sent to Ukraine, or you know what they spend, you know, on weapons, and you know, or you know, it's just small change. And like, we're constantly being told, it seems to be quite universal in the West at the moment, that you know, we've got to be worrying about wealth redistribution and fairness and equality and equity and all this. But you know, if the what I mean, if there is some kind of systematic racism or something going on, I mean, who's going to be the one that's facilitating that? Because I mean, we live. We don't really live in what you call. We don't live in a free market society at all. I mean, you can't just. I mean, especially in Spain, there's so many rules and regulations about how you like how business works and things. You know, you can't. You start a business and you've got to really stay within your lane and your business. You're not allowed to like go outside that, and you can't just. There are so many rules about how much you know, you can pay people, and I mean, people living outside Spain might not know this, but there's so in like the UK there's a minimum wage, and it's like, I don't even know what it is, but you know, there's a wage that you can't pay people less than that. Well, in Spain there's a wage that you can't pay less per category of like what you do. For like you know, that job can't earn less than this, and it's like, you know, it sounds great, doesn't it? If you think, oh well, you know, you're guaranteed stuff, but it's kind of difficult to sustain, because I mean, surely you should be allowed. You know, if you're in charge, you know, if you own yourself, and by extension you own like what your body does, which is like the work, then surely you should be allowed to do it for whatever you want. You know, if you're, it might be more interesting, especially like if you just come out of university or something. Wouldn't you prefer to earn less, or at somewhere, you know, you'll be able to learn a lot, or I don't know. It's kind of. I understand. I mean, it kind of depends on your mentality. Do you think that the world owes you a living or not? Because I don't see why we shouldn't allow young people to, when you know, when you're in a position that you've got no responsibilities, and really you, in all likelihood, you're living at home. Why can't you why shouldn't you be allowed to, you know, take a job, a good job that's not well paid? You know, it's not slavery, but for some reason it seems to be okay. In Spain there's loads of people who have no jobs and aren't studying. They call them ninis, so it's like, ni trabajo ni estudios, you know, like not working and not studying. But the thing is, it's like, employers can't afford to. It's not like you know anything. You don't know anything. These people don't know how to do anything. But Even I'd employ someone to, learn. I could get projects that I thought I don't have time to do myself, and they don't even pay particularly well. But if I had access to like someone who actually just wanted to learn how to code, then I could train them up. Like a kind of apprenticeship thing. But I can't do that because I can't afford to pay them. Because it's like, what happens if we take on this project and everyone knows that I'm going to get some kid who's an apprentice to learn and stuff. So it's not like I wouldn't be tricking anyone. But so this guy has to have a contract and then he has to have regular wages and stuff like that. And business just doesn't work like that. At least it doesn't in Spain. When you're I am a contractor, but when I was working for contracting for Spanish companies, there was a time when I was like 4 months in arrears. It was like February and I still hadn't been paid for October, the year before. And it's just like, and the guy just literally said to me, well, that's just the way it is. If you can't take it, then you shouldn't have become a contractor. It's like, the things don't get sorted out just by stacking laws. By telling someone that they have the right to something, it doesn't make it magically happen. It's completely magical thinking. And it's magical thinking by people who believe in the state, who believe that just because you write something down, then suddenly it becomes true. It's like, in the Spanish constitution, apparently I've got the right to like a job. I've got a right to a job. It's like, how does that work? When people come up and say, you have a right to healthcare, and say, well, what does that mean? Does that mean you have the right to force someone to be a doctor? I mean, surely that's what it means. If you have the right to something, then how does that work? You have the right to a home. You have a right to somewhere to live. So what, you can force someone to build your house or something? How does that work? Surely rights. I mean, really, a right is, you have the right to freely associate, to say what you want, to think what you want, and you have the right to your own labour. I mean, basically, yeah, you've got the right to do anything that doesn't affect anyone else. So when people say, the right to swing your arm ends where my face begins, it's like, well, duh. But where rights, like, my right to do something doesn't end where your fear begins. So it's true. You might want to say that the right for me to swing my arm does end where your face begins. But where it doesn't end is where your fear begins. And that's where we're getting. That's just the craziness of believing that rights come from the state and they don't. Surely, it's not like, you don't have to say that they come from God, but if there's anything special about being alive, then surely people can imagine, if you believe in the sanctity of life, then can you not believe that that gives you the right to live? Why can't you say things? I mean, hate crimes, I don't understand why we can just call something a hate crime. I mean, yeah, people say odious things, and some people, do say hateful, racist things, but whatever happened to sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, It's not the same saying something mean to someone, or being racist, as like actually physically assaulting them. I mean, it really isn't. Words aren't violence, they're just not. inciting violence is different. It's not the same as just like going, I hate you. You know, it seems like we're on a path to where even children in the playground will be going to jail soon for hate crimes. I mean, hate speech, what does that mean? There's like a thing when words get put together and like they're kind of jarring on your brain because you don't really know what they mean. I think that's done on purpose because people aren't that stupid. So like when you hear things like, I don't know, new normal, like that doesn't fit. How do you have a new normal? Like you can, normal's a consensus thing. It happens over time. You don't just go, boom, this is the new normal. And it's the same with like hate speech. So are you not allowed to hate anyone anymore? Or it's okay to hate people but you just can't say it? Or is it just that you can hate certain people now and then later maybe you won't be able to hate them? No, it was like people didn't have any problems with people were coming out on the telly and hating Russians. Like why? It's not like the whole of Russia decided that they wanted to invade Ukraine. It was like it was in one state decided to do it, not everyone. And it's like, it's not like, although you might say the whole of Germany was somewhat anti-Semitic during like the Hitler reign, which maybe it was true, I don't know, but I mean Europe was largely anti-Semitic at that time, and I'd say that now, there's lots of anti-Semitic sentiment going on right now, and look at all the hate speech laws that we've got that you're not even allowed to say, but it doesn't stop. I don't know. It's just I think we live in a very strange time, but the problem is the solution isn't the right government. If only we had the right government, if only we could get the right people in power. That's the problem. It's the delegation of responsibility. It's like, my money is being used to kill people in different parts of the world. My money, when I go to work and I'm doing my job, I'm paying for people to be killed, to be murdered. I don't know, how can we justify that? How does that make sense? Why is that moral in any sense at all? It's not. Why, if you were just to go out and just kill someone from a different country, then that would be murder. But if you dress up in a uniform, if you've got a soldier's costume on, and you magically get told by the state you can go and kill them, even if you go to someone else's country and murder them, when you come home, you're not a murderer somehow. In fact, maybe you're a hero. How does that happen? I don't know. I didn't understand that when I was a kid. Even before I thought about, I knew anything about self-ownership or anarchism or anything like that. Even then, I couldn't understand how can you be a murderer. But it just depends on the context. It's like, if you do that, even if you took, so right now, if I was to sign up and just go over to Ukraine and start killing Russians, then that'd be okay. But if I went and killed a Russian here, then I'd be a murderer. So it's like, maybe war just is murder. And are we just okay with that? Is that what we're saying? Is that what, like, if the state says something's right, then it's just right. That's it, forget it. Because it's just all magical thinking. There's all truth is just relative. Really, is that why is that why we get told that? Is that why moral relativism exists? Because if it didn't, if we were taught that under all circumstances killing is wrong, then you'd never get anyone volunteering to go to war. Is that it? I don't know. I mean, people probably wouldn't even want to be police officers. Because that's another thing. I mean, soldiers and police officers, you sign up to say, I'm going to do someone else's bidding. I leave my mind to one side and I just go and follow orders. Nuremberg had a lot to say about that. And that's another thing that no one seems to care about anymore. So, I don't know. We live in troubling times. I mean, I try to be stoic about these things in the sense of, I know that I'll suffer more in my mind than I will. Right now I can't do anything about it. It is out of my control. It's just the only thing I can do is talk about it, talk to people, and point things out. But it's not until we actually grow up as a society, because society isn't the state. I've had this argument before as well. It's just not. How can it be? It's like if you're with your mates and you go on holiday, you've got your little microcosm of a society going on there. It doesn't change just because you go to a different country. You still have the same relationships, even though you step across some magic line and a whole heap of different laws apply to you. It's not like, nothing's changed. You won't start interacting with them just differently because some laws changed. I'd like to think you wouldn't. So I think we've got a long way to go, but I think maybe it's just, if things get worse, then people's eyes will be open just out of necessity. Maybe that's the way it will work. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't cook it. Well, I haven't cooked here, but I'm done. So the kitchen's clean enough for now, and I'll see you next week.